Spring sunshine by the bucket load. If you like blue skies, it has been a Bobby Dazzler of a day today. But how long will the sunshine last? How warm will it get? Where's the rain? Clue, it's in Spain and Portugal. And we'll have quite an international flavour to this week's deep dive because we're also going to be looking at the severe weather in the United States. Tornadoes, yes, but plenty more besides, as we will find out. Welcome along to the Met Office Deep Dive. My name's Alex Deakin. Thank you very much for being there. Please leave a comment. Most importantly, give us a like and share the love. Let other Met heads know that we are here. Every week we dive into some kind of meteorological majesty and take a really close look at various aspects of the weather in the UK, but also, as we'll see, particularly this week, at things going on around the world. Let us know in the comments if you like that, if you'd rather focus on the UK, if you like the international side of things. Let us know what you want to hear about. We will try and tailor our deep dives going forward to what you require. We do try and read all of the comments and try and respond to some of them as well. So do please leave a comment, do please give us a like, and do please share this amongst your friends and family, and as I say, fellow Met heads. Lots and lots and lots to talk about, as always. Let's start with the bigger picture. Here's the satellite image. It's kind of telling the story quite nicely. If we fast forward to the here and now, well, largely clear skies across the UK. Look at that. Yeah, there's a little bit of stratocumulus lingering across Shetland. It was a cloudy start for Northern Ireland, but even here it's brightening up for many places. It has been a sparkling day of sunshine. We'll talk about the UK weather in a moment, because first of all, I want to draw your attention further south. It has been a very wet spell over Iberia. I was fortunate enough to be there a couple of weeks ago. Got very wet and windy, and well, there's more of that to come. We've seen this plume of cloud bringing further rain, and well, out in the Atlantic, just look at that. You can tell by that. That's not great weather. That big dip, that is an area of low pressure, and that is going to bring more wet and windy weather to Spain and Portugal over the next couple of days. And it's all to do with a dip in the jet stream. The jet stream is driving its way southwards and helping to develop that low pressure in here, and it's all slowly but surely heading its way towards Iberia. And we're going to see more wet weather here over the next day or so. How much wet weather? Well, let's take a closer look at what's going on and the rainfall accumulations. Let's zoom in a little bit on that. Let's put them on as blocks, and we can really see we've got some heavy rain. This is the 24-hour rainfall accumulations. You can see some quite heavy pulses of rain across eastern parts of Spain and just to the north of Madrid. That's happening at the moment, but if we zoom out a little bit and focus in on Portugal and play through towards Wednesday, look at these tower blocks building up. Heavy rain really building up on the coastline there. Pretty wet also across the Algarve. Those amounts in that greater than 75 millimetres up to 100 millimetres of rainfall. That basically equates to the whole March average, if not higher, for this part of the world. So yeah, a month's worth of rain likely to fall in a day or so. Not just wet, but also very windy too. So that rain will then spread steadily. It won't be as heavy across Spain, but further pulses of rain to come here, particularly across parts of southern Spain as we go through Wednesday and into Thursday. So yes, some very wet conditions for Spain and Portugal. Weather system's actually been named as Storm Martinho by the Portuguese Weather Service, and you can see why, because again, as we just play through that, let's take the jet stream off, just see that weather system coming in. Look at the isobars really squidging together there. That's tonight. The strongest winds tonight and tomorrow on that Portuguese coastline. That is not going to be very pleasant. I don't want to be playing golf in it. I don't want to be out in it at all. Look at that, with those strong winds really coming up from the southeast across Spain and Portugal tonight and tomorrow morning. So not just wet, not just potentially a month's worth of rain falling in a day or so, but also very gusty winds as we go through the course of tonight and into tomorrow. So yeah, stays very windy throughout Wednesday and into Wednesday night. That low gradually then spills its way further north. Further circulations develop because the jet stream is still in that area, still helping to develop low pressure systems. So yeah, pretty wet week across Spain and Portugal, and it has been a pretty wet month all in all as well. Eventually, you'll notice as we run through the rest of this week that low pressure system is just starting to creep further north and creep towards the UK, and that will mix things up for us as we head towards the weekend. But we'll have more on that in a moment. So yes, very wet in Spain and Portugal, but I said quite a big international flavour to this week's deep dive, because now we're heading over to the United States. But not just me talking about this, because earlier on I had a chat with Deputy Chief Meteorologist Dan Holley. He popped in to talk about what's been happening in the United States. Severe weather outbreak over the weekend when he was actually on shift. So earlier on I had a chat with Dan Holley. Dan, thank you very much for joining us here. This is your first deep dive.
It is. It's nice to be here.
Do you want to tell everyone what your role is here at the Met Office and where people may have seen you before?
Yeah, so I'm a Deputy Chief Meteorologist here working in the Expert Weather Hub, and we look at UK and global weather, hence we're here talking about global weather here. My previous job, I did a variety of things, but one of my roles was as a weather presenter for BBC Lakeith, so some of our viewers may recognise me back in the day on TV in the east of England.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on camera as a first time on the deep dive,
yes.
First of many, hopefully. Now, you were working over the weekend, and we're here to talk about what happened stateside, some pretty serious weather.
Yeah, it certainly was a busy weekend. If we start off by looking at the bigger picture then as to what was happening, because we had a variety of hazards, a multi-hazard event. We quite often use the term multi-hazard in the UK, but I think this takes it to a whole new level, doesn't it? So essentially, on Friday, we had this area of low pressure tracking across the southern portions of the plains. This is for early Saturday, so by this stage it's moved up towards the northern plains. And this brought very strong winds with blowing dust, wildfires, power cuts, that sort of thing across the southern plains. It also brought a tornado outbreak later in the day on Friday further east. And then if we run this animation through into Saturday itself, you'll see this second low develops on the trailing cold front.
Right.
And this brought another spell of tornadoes across the southern states, the Gulf states here.
So these bright colours, that's a lot of heavy rain,
yes.
And within that band, that's where we saw the worst of the tornadoes. But those strong winds, that was the initial problem across further north.
Yeah, really tight pressure gradient on the southern flank. You can see the isobars really squeezing on the southern flank, and some of the gusts of wind that we saw within that. Amarillo in the Texas Panhandle, so somewhere around here, had a gust of 83 miles an hour. Amarillo has a population roughly the same as Hull, so it gives you an idea.
Oh, a place I know well.
I knew you'd like that stat. And then a little bit further south in Lubbock, which is in West Texas, they had a gust of 81. And I think that's its strongest gust there since 1976. So
oh, wow.
Unusually strong winds.
Yeah, goodness.
And obviously causing a lot of power cuts because of the strong winds as well.
And other hazards that we saw, obviously this is an image that we've got from OK Weather Watch. What are we seeing here?
Yes.
Or what are we not seeing here?
Well, exactly. This was taken actually by a friend of mine who lives in Oklahoma, and he chases storms. He knows his stuff.
Oh, wow.
He was chasing on Friday last week, and obviously this dust storm developed because of those strong winds, and you can see the visibility massively drops. You cannot see very much ahead of you. You can't even see vehicles going the other way on the other side of the road. So understandably, this led to a lot of accidents, both in Texas and Kansas, sadly led to some fatalities actually with multiple vehicles colliding in these conditions. And actually, if we look at the satellite sequence, you'll see this dust being picked up thanks to these very strong winds. So
again, let's orient it. So that's
exactly.
Where are we? Which state's which?
So we've got Oklahoma here.
Right. That's Texas there. That's the top bit of Texas.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we've got Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, etc. We'll come on to what else is going on in the satellite sequence in a moment, but just focusing further south, you can see all this sort of dirty brown colour here coming out across Texas up into Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That's all that dust being picked up, originating from, say, New Mexico over here, but then being transported a long way northwards.
Hundreds, if not thousands of miles across there. Right?
Yeah, I did a very quick calculation on Friday evening, actually, looking at how much of this area was covered by dust at any one time, and it was larger than the UK.
Wow.
Which is just mind-boggling that many parts of the US were covered by dust.
Incredible.
Very poor air quality, as you can imagine, with all of this blowing around as well. So
you can see that's the low there, that's the secondary
right.
one that developed, and it just picked up those winds. And what are these little crosses on here that we're seeing? They're lightning flashes, right?
They are indeed, yes. You can see the thunderstorms erupting on what is effectively a dry line. The US is quite unique, actually. It has a synoptic feature called a dry line, which you don't tend to find in many parts of the world, and that's essentially a boundary between very warm, moist air from the Gulf and much drier air coming in from the desert southwest. So usually you can't really see very much. You know, in the UK, when we get a weather front, you see a band of cloud and rain. In the US, you have these boundaries, but they're not that visible until you get these thunderstorms erupting along them. And then suddenly you can see there's clearly a boundary in here that's working its way
And that's
through.
called a dry line.
Yes.
And it's where the moist air hits the drier air.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very common in the US because obviously it's very dry and hot over the desert southwest.
Yeah.
And much more.
It's like a frontal boundary with the two air
Yeah,
masses, but it's got a
essentially,
specific name because it's so well defined.
That's right. Yeah.
Dry line. Not heard that before. Okay, so we've got the dust, we've got the thunderstorms. What else? What else did we see? Or is ongoing, I guess.
It is
in
indeed.
this part of the world.
So you know, we had some significant wildfires in Oklahoma. Some local meteorologists in the area have described this as the worst wildfire outbreak they've ever seen.
Wow.
In terms of the number of fires on one day. I think it was something like 130 fires. Around 300 properties have been destroyed just in the state of Oklahoma, and something like 12 counties had a state of emergency declared because of the wildfires on Friday.
Wow.
And obviously these are being fanned by those incredibly strong winds we've already talked about. The air is very dry. In fact, there was one weather station just east of Oklahoma City that recorded a relative humidity of just 2%.
Oh my goodness.
That's how dry the air was on Friday. And on top of that, it was 22 degrees, so hot and dry and incredibly windy as well. So,
And
you know, perfect conditions for fires.
That's partly because, I guess, if we go back to the satellite, the winds, the lows coming here, the winds, and the Rockies, you've got the Rockies here, right? So the air is just coming over the Rockies and drying out as it descends.
Yes, and obviously a very dry source down in the desert southwest as well. So, yeah, incredibly dry air, and, you know, that's what fires need, really, and they spread so quickly during the course of Friday, and sadly a lot of people have lost their homes because of this in Oklahoma.
And it's really ongoing. There's still many of these fires still burning.
Yeah, I mean, when you've got very strong winds, obviously it's very hard to contain the fires, but you need to evacuate people who are in the path of the fires as well. Now, in fact, if we go back to the satellite picture, there's some little nuances you can pick out in the wind direction. So down here across Oklahoma, we've got a southwesterly wind. This is actually a smoke plume just here. Southwesterly winds, so initially the fires are moving in one direction, but if you get a weak front coming through, which we see, you see this plume here coming down from the northwest, that's a sudden change in wind direction. And so it's a real challenge for firefighters to keep on top of that sudden shift in wind, because suddenly the fire will move in a different direction. So, yeah, a really difficult day. And obviously, because it's so windy, you can't get aircraft up to try and put water down as well until the winds calm down later in the day. So for many reasons, it was a really difficult day to get on top of. Incidentally, these black dots you just saw briefly there, they'll come back in a minute, on the infrared. They are the wildfires. They become more visible on the infrared.
Okay, so this is the visible. So this is visible, and then when sun sets, then you can see those black patches in there on the infrared. That's actual fires burning.
Yeah, that's right. It's incredible how many they are and how big they are as well. When you
I mean, that is a huge. I mean, that's Texas is what 20 times the size of the UK or something, isn't it? So
it's certainly a big place.
Yeah, that is. They are absolutely vast, and yeah, you can see some smoke plumes coming in here. So much you can see from one satellite picture.
Yeah. I just thought this was a stunning picture because there's so much going on.
So much going
Friday
on.
Evening,
just on Friday. Must have been a fun night shift, just watching all this develop, whilst at the same time being terrifying. Part of our job. We haven't even touched on the tornadoes. So should we look at those? We've got more. Yes, we've got one more to show. The wildfires. What's this?
Well, this was a bit of an odd sort of event, really. So a wildfire went past this weather station in Oklahoma. And briefly, it recorded a temperature, it says here, 173 Fahrenheit, which is, I think, about 78 Celsius.
Wow.
And then it went offline, unsurprisingly. And you can see from the pictures.
Yeah, we can actually hopefully have a little zoom in on that. You can see. So this is kit that's just been melted by the wildfires that have gone through.
It shows up pretty well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's all warped and stuff. So
incredible.
They will have to obviously replace those instruments. But yeah, incredible to see that it recorded temperatures near 80 Celsius as the wildfire went through.
Yeah. Unbelievable. And yes, there was also tornadoes.
Yeah, so we saw those thunderstorms erupting on the satellite sequence. We had 2 waves of tornadoes, one on Friday evening. Those were a bit further north, across sort of the Midwest area. And then these pictures we've got here are from Mississippi on Saturday.
Right.
3 tornadoes have been rated EF4, which is
the scale goes from
0 to 5.
0 to 5, yeah.
One of them has been estimated wind speeds of 190 miles an hour, top end EF4. They're still investigating. It takes days, if not weeks, especially when you get so many. We had something like 90 tornadoes, I think, from this event that we know of so far. So after an event, usually meteorologists from the National Weather Service will go out and look at the damage and try and plot the path of these things and try and work out the strength. And they have to bear in mind, not all properties are built particularly well. So, you could look at a flattened house and think, oh, that looks devastating, but actually the house may have been poorly constructed. Some houses aren't even anchored into the ground in some cases. So
wow. It's quite hard then to retrospectively have to know what the foundations were before you can work out how strong the winds are. Incredible.
So it takes time, obviously, to try and work out where this sits on the scale of winds. But at the moment, 190 is the highest I've seen so far.
Another one here, which is...
Yeah.
Again, hard to tell how far away that is, but it looks like a very wide field of a tornado. You can certainly see the
left-hand edge somewhere around here, and the right one over there. This picture kind of captures it fairly well, actually, because a lot of the tornadoes this time of year tend to be in the Gulf states further south, where it's very humid, the cloud base is very low, they often get rain-wrapped, and as you can see, there are a lot of trees and hills in this part of the world, a lot of pine trees. So getting a visible view of the tornado is very difficult and very hard to sort of chase them, if you like, because they tend to move through very quickly as well. And sadly, the population is denser in the southern states. And also because you're near the Gulf, you've got this plentiful moisture all day long. So it's not as dependent on the sort of sunshine heating the ground that you would see elsewhere in the US.
Right.
So you can get tornadoes any time of the day in the south, whereas the further north you go, they tend to be more sort of late afternoon, early evening time. So these can kill quite a few people at night, especially because you can't see them coming.
Yeah, nighttime tornadoes are way more dangerous, aren't they? Because they are. There's indications that nighttime tornadoes are becoming more frequent as well with climate change.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff. And there's just one more picture here to show you the devastation.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so many words you can say about this. Really, it kind of speaks for itself. Just how devastating some of these things can be. And how communities can be just completely destroyed in a matter of less than a minute.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely devastating scenes there, and the potential for more severe weather in the United States over the rest of this week. If we take a look at what is happening over there now, and see it's not the same kind of setup, but it's similar in a low pressure in a similar kind of place at the moment. And if we play through that, so this is the jet stream. There's a low pressure here, but actually the jet kind of intensifies this limb of a new low kind of spawns out of it because of the flow over the Rockies.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is later on today, and again you can see the isobars squeezing together. As we've already said, the wildfires are still ongoing in some areas, and we're probably going to see more today because the winds are going to be picking up again. Very dry air once again coming in from the desert southwest. So parts of the southern plains today are under alert for wildfires.
Are they? Yes, for Tuesday.
Yeah, and as this low continues to trundle northeast, we might get some severe weather, severe thunderstorms up in towards the Midwest and the Great Lakes. Not to the extent that we saw at the weekend, but another wave of thunderstorms with that, and possibly more once we get to the weekend as well.
So you can see that, as the low, those isobars really squeezing together, so that wind just picking up, and again, just drawing in the dry air from over the Rockies. It's all to do, talk about Tornado Alley, and it's just because of the setup of the United States and the way the land is. We'd actually take everything off. We can maybe look at the states and just see how that works, because you've got the Rockies here, so they've got the air coming over the Rockies, which is very dry, and you get the air coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, and it's where they combine.
Yeah, it's a very unique setup that allows repeated episodes of these severe thunderstorms every year, really. And what you tend to find is very hot air over the higher terrain in the southwest, not necessarily over the Rockies, but it's higher ground over here. That comes out across very moist air at low levels and acts as a lid initially, called a cap. And then you get an upper trough in the jet stream coming in, and that tends to release the energy that's been building up under that cap as you get the sort of daytime heating going on and you get these thunderstorms. So this is kind of the beginning of the storm season. I mean, you can get tornadoes any time of the year if you've got the right ingredients, but the ingredients come together much more frequently when you get into sort of March, April, May onwards.
So you've got that warm, moist air at low levels, you've got that air higher up in the atmosphere, and warm air obviously wants to rise, and it tries to rise, and it's capped initially, but then pop it goes, and that's where the expression "loaded gun" comes from.
Exactly.
So the atmosphere is like a loaded gun. You hear that quite a lot from the States, and then bang, it just goes, and you get the thunderstorms as we've seen. And we can show you how it changes through through the year. So what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so these are plots from the Storm Prediction Centre, and it's looking at historical events and the probability of a tornado within a 25-kilometre radius. Worth noting that the numbers on the scale here are incredibly small.
Yes, yeah, you might not be able to read that, but the white's like 0.1%, and this kind of mid-red is 1%.
Exactly. So, anywhere, it's a very low probability of getting a tornado. But what we can see here, this is for the mid-March, and then we've got mid-April up here, mid-May, mid-June, just to show the progression through the spring and early summer. And you can see, the probabilities at this time of year are mainly in the Gulf states, where we saw most of the tornadoes over the weekend. And then as we go deeper into the season and the jet stream starts to move further north through the spring and summer, we see that focus shifting further north while also increasing. We start to get these darker colours appearing, focusing on the central plains once we get through to sort of mid-May. And then once we get into June, it starts moving a bit further north, and by July, actually, the risk starts expanding up into Canada as well. So Canada can get its fair share of supercells and thunderstorms. Once we
but
get
more
to the
likely
summer.
later in the summer.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
In the summer rather than the spring, which is, people always associate May with like the peak of the tornado season, and it is shifting again with climate change. The suggestion that it's getting earlier, or the start of the season is getting earlier, as well as those increasing chance of seeing them more.
And
more
we're
at
seeing
night.
Temperatures in the UK like 20-degree thresholds getting reached earlier on average as our climate continues to warm as well. What's particularly unique, if we quickly go back to the satellite animation for this part of the world anyway, and we zoom in on what's going on down in the Gulf states in particular, and just sort of concentrate on what the clouds are doing in the low levels down here.
Should be playing through. There we go.
There we go. So if we focus on what the clouds are doing over, say, Alabama, Mississippi, etc., at low levels, we've got these small cumuliform clouds which are forming.
See the streets, the cloud streets there.
Yeah. I mean, a classic sort of fair weather cloud bubbling up. But if you watch their motion, they're running south to north, streaming in from the Gulf. So that's indicative at low levels of all this warm, moist air coming in from the Gulf and streaming further north into the US. But what we also notice, if you look a little bit higher up, if you like, you can see this sort of wispy cirrus cloud every now and again. There's a band of it here, and that's running from west to east. So just by looking at the satellite picture, you can already tell the winds are doing different things at different levels. And this obviously tells you there's a lot of what's called wind shear, where the wind changes direction or speed as you go up through the atmosphere. And that's the kind of ingredients you need, along with the instability, to generate these rotating thunderstorms that produce these
low levels of winds coming up from the Gulf, higher up they're coming in from the west, and it's that combination, that shift. And that's so clear on those satellite images. Absolutely fascinating stuff. There are the thunderstorms breaking out up there.
All the lightning strikes associated with them as well. So.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible.
I could watch that loop for hours. There's just so much going on.
It's just incredible. I say small part of the America, but it's actually quite a large part of the States. Dan, thank you so much for coming in. Absolutely fascinating to have you on. Really, really insightful stuff there on that.
It's been good fun.
Severe weather in the United States. Obviously, serious weather ongoing, and will continue to go. And the team upstairs, the operational meteorologists and the guidance unit, will be continuing to look at this over the next few days, and we'll continue to have updates. Yep. But thank you so much for coming in and offering your insight, and thank you to your getting all that imagery from your friend. Hope he stays safe over in the United States.
Yes, he's very busy at the moment, that's for sure.
I bet he is, the busiest time of the year.
Yes,
right?
definitely,
Dan, thank you so much for coming in, and please do come back again sometime.
Yeah, pleasure, thank you.
Great to have Dan pop into the deep dive earlier. Do let us know if you enjoy that kind of stuff. Really insightful, I thought. So let us know in the comments if you like the international flavour to these deep dives, or say any other suggestions. Please do hit the like and the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to our channel, but I'm sure you already are, because you're a proper methead, because you're this far into the deep dive. So thank you again for being there. We really do appreciate it. Okay, we've covered Spain, Portugal, we've covered North America. Let's focus a little bit on the United Kingdom, because it is a pretty interesting week of weather, especially if you like spring sunshine. I mentioned earlier, glorious blue sky day for the vast majority on Tuesday, all thanks to this area of high pressure. But we are in for a change, slow and subtle changes over the rest of this week. The high is slinking away down to the south. The jet stream is still here, anchoring these areas of low pressure, pushing them in towards Portugal. it kind of almost gets cut off, kind of almost circulates back in on itself like an oxbow lake there for a time during Wednesday, but it doesn't quite fully get into that circulation. It actually then reorientates itself later this week into more of a trough. And what we start to see is this low pressure system developing, pushed northwards by the jet stream, slowly but surely encroaching up towards the United Kingdom. So if we put the satellite picture back on and go through this sequence again, you can see the storms developing across Spain and Portugal as we went through the course of the weekend. A few heavy showers here. This next weather system coming in that's with us now. But the cloud that's stuck in here from this circulation is going to get pushed northwards earlier. So back to the here and now, at time of recording, Tuesday, this cloud is going to drift further north. So while it's been clear for the vast majority today, we are going to see more clouds spilling north, but we're still being influenced by the high pressure system at the moment, and will continue to do so through Wednesday and Thursday. By the time we get to Thursday, the high has moved down here. The low is still here, which means the winds have switched direction. So take the jet stream off. Let's look at the winds at the surface coming in from the east at the moment, or for most of this week they've been coming in from the east, tapping into some cool air. Still quite chilly over northern Europe, as you'd expect at this time of year. So we've been drawing in cooler air, but as the high slinks south, we cut off that colder air, and gradually the winds start to switch direction, so that by Wednesday and Thursday we see the winds are now coming up more from the southeast. So that is going to draw in warmer air from down here. So we are going to get things warming up a little bit, both by day and by night eventually. So it is going to turn warmer. Thursday is probably going to be the peak of the warmth, when we could reach 20 degrees Celsius. Let's look at the temperatures over the next few days. Well, let's generally look at the weather pattern of the next few days. So there's the high slinking away. We've got the easterly wind at the moment, which is why it's pretty chilly still on the east coast right now. Wednesday, we go forward. We see a bit more cloud spilling in. The winds still coming in from the south, generally pushing up there across the northeast of Scotland. So anywhere where there's a breeze still coming in from the coast, still going to be on the chilly side. But by the time we get to Thursday, there's more clouds spilling in. You might just be able to make out a few dots of showers as the low is getting closer. The air's destabilising a little bit. Some of that cloud shearing ahead from Spain and Portugal. So, yeah, generally turning a little cloudier, but still, for the vast majority, Wednesday, Thursday, nice days, hazy sunshine, only a very small chance of seeing a shower. But look at the temperatures. By the time we get to Thursday, we're up to 14, 15, 16 degrees at least. And I reckon we could easily get up to 18, 19, maybe 20 degrees Celsius. That's looking at the temperatures overnight now. And we'll see those rising quite a bit. So while it will be cold tonight with the clear skies, could get down to -6 or -7. By the time we're getting into Thursday night, Friday night, the wind's coming up from the southeast. So although there'll be still quite a bit of clear skies, those temperatures will be ticking up quite a bit over the next few days. So yeah, temperatures gradually rising. Still cold on the east coast today, even here turning milder. There, Thursday's temperatures, as I said, 16, 17, 18 easily. We could easily peak at 20 degrees somewhere across the southeast in this area, as is typical. By the time we get to Friday, there's a big question mark. So we are going to see a change. The weather patterns are shifting as that low gets closer to us. But the timing of it, there's quite a bit of uncertainty, more so than usual. Let me show you what the Met Office computer model is expecting. This is the rainfall building up over the next few days. Dry, pretty dry, small chance of a shower. But by the time we get to Friday, well, much more in the way of rain covering the UK. But how likely is that? Well, let's put the rainfall on. If we just take that off and go through, by the time we get to Friday, this is what the Met Office model wants to do. So it's pushing up a lot of rain through Friday morning, that band of rain coming up, some pretty heavy bursts in that as well, and extending all the way up to the Western Isles of Scotland on that, and then it just gets wetter as we go through the weekend, and actually developing quite a nasty looking area of low pressure across the UK on Sunday. So that is moving northwards. That would suggest some quite heavy rain. But if you look at other computer models, they're not really in agreement with this, and I can show you a couple of examples of that. So this is the EC, the European model, courtesy of windy.com. That's where the European model has the rain on Friday. So yeah, it's in a similar position across Wales, southwest England, but it's not as intense, and it certainly isn't as extensive further north across western parts of Scotland. So that's a clue that our model is perhaps overdoing it. And if we look at GFS, the American model, lower resolution, but it has the same weather pattern in that low is gradually edging its way northwards. But by now, on this model, on the American model, the GFS model, well, there's only a bit of rain really across Devon and Cornwall. Most of it's in southern parts of Ireland. Wales is largely dry, and certainly western Scotland is dry and fine. And one more example, Icon, the German model, which again has a similar setup. So all of these are agreeing, all these computer models are agreeing about the weather pattern, with the low heading up from Spain, Portugal, and being in the southwest. But look at that, that's completely dry across the UK midday on Friday. So there is a fair bit of uncertainty about what will happen as we go through Friday and into the weekend. But all the models are agreeing that low is approaching, and we will see some wet weather moving its way northwards by the time we get to Friday, as that low then comes in, spreads northwards. But the detail of where we see the rain, how much rain we see, well, that's open to a bit of doubt. It is going to gradually get wetter through the course of the weekend. But if you've got plans, particularly so on Friday, I suspect large parts of central and eastern Britain will still be fine and dry on Friday, but it is going to turn more showery from the southwest. How heavy that rain is and how intense that low is, I say, open to a bit of doubt, but we think that the UK model, our model, is overdoing it at the moment. If you want more details on that, if you do have plans for this weekend, then I suggest you subscribe, and then you won't miss tomorrow's 10-day trend. Should be a good one with Aidan. So Aidan will be recording that on Wednesday. That'll be available on Wednesday afternoon. That will have more details about the uncertainty, why there's uncertainty, and what we can expect into the weekend. But generally speaking, if you like it fine and sunny, enjoy the next couple of days, because it is going to change as we head into the course of the weekend. We are going to see things turning wetter, and, well, perhaps we could do with that, because it has been a very dry month so far. Quick look at the stats. We are just beyond halfway through March, and this is the accumulation of the rainfall through the month, averaged across the whole of the UK, and that is quite stark. That is a very dry month. So this black line through the middle, that's the average. Well over 100 years worth of data. That's the wettest March on record, that red line at the top, the driest March on record, this blue line at the bottom, and these grey shaded areas representing 90% and 95%. And you can just about make out where we are now in this current month, March 2025, is in that bottom 5%, or top 5% in terms of driest, bottom 5% in terms of rainfall. Depends which way you look at it. But yeah, in the most extreme 5% in terms of how dry it has been so far. That is going to change as we see wetter weather coming in, and it you know, not really that useful to look at the stats halfway through a month always, but that is so stark that I thought I would show it. Because it is really quite interesting. It has been a very dry March. The main reason for that, just high pressure position of the jet stream. We've had higher pressure across parts of the south. At the start of the month, we're expecting perhaps a bit more in the way of westerly winds to bring a bit more in the way of wetter weather. But one of the reasons for that is it perhaps not happening is because La Nina has weakened. We were expecting La Nina. It's been a very weak La Nina, and now it's weakened further. La Nina at the end of winter can generate, or is associated with, more westerly winds and wetter weather for the UK. But we haven't seen that, so one of the reasons behind that suggestion could be that weakened La Nina is part of it. We also had an SSW, sudden stratospheric warming, the weekend before last. That also promotes blocking weather patterns and slow moving weather patterns like we've seen, but that takes at least a week or so to come down through the atmosphere. So we're not really seeing the effects of that, but it does suggest that we could see continued patterns like this for the rest of the month. So yeah, plenty to get our teeth into, even though it has been a very dry month. But there's also some regional variations, and just backing up that high pressure has been dominant across the south. This is the map of the UK as a whole. Now, bear in mind, key point to factor out, this is compared to the average for the whole month. So you would expect it to be drier than average at this stage, because we're only this is up to yesterday, so the 17 days in. So we're just over halfway. So you would normally expect at this time of the month 55% of average. And that is this first shade of brown here, between 50 and 75. And there are pockets across northern Scotland that are in that. bracket because it has been wetter here. So much closer to average across northern Scotland because generally higher pressure has been hanging on across the south, and we've had spells of wet weather, and we've also had northerly winds bringing some showers down into this part of the world, which is why also parts of North Yorkshire are much closer to average. But generally speaking, we've had higher pressure in those block weather patterns, which is one of the reasons why it has been a very dry March so far. And another way of looking at that is looking at the temperatures. These are the minimum temperatures. I thought I'd show this because it was nice. Someone suggested it looked like the French flag, which it does if you go like that. If you look at it normally, it looks more like the Dutch flag, to be fair. Or if you're of a certain age, it looks a bit more like Neapolitan ice cream. It's gone a bit mouldy. But yeah, minimum temperatures showing that the northern parts of the UK well above average so far this month when compared to the average, whereas in the south it has been a lot colder, and again suggesting we've had higher pressure here, clearer skies at night allowing those temperatures to fall away, low pressure systems and rain bands drifting across the north, keeping the cloudier skies, the windier conditions, which helps to keep those minimum temperatures up at night. So quite interesting stats so far through this month. Again, one to keep an eye on through the rest of the month because, yeah, we are looking at some wetter weather into the weekend, but beyond that, well, it's likely to be quite a static weather pattern, whether that's high pressure or low pressure. The jury is out, but we are looking potentially at quite static weather patterns for the rest of the month. One more thing to show you on this week's deep dive. This is dust spreading north from Sahara. This is for Friday. Again, one of our Deputy Chief Meteorologists pointed this out to me. Dust plume heading its way up from the Sahara. So the potential on Friday for levels of dust across parts of southern Britain, parts of South Wales, southern England in particular. And actually, if you look at the cross-section through that, the levels of dust are actually quite low in the atmosphere. So this is a cross-section through the atmosphere around 2 to 3 degrees west. And if we play through that, I'm going to get a little bit of a zoom in on it, so it's a little bit clearer. But those yellow higher concentrations between about 950 and 800 hectopascal. So what's that? Between about 500 meters and 2 kilometers up. So it's quite low. This isn't quite high in the sky. It's quite low in the sky, this dust plume that's heading its way northwards. And you can tell, you know, the low pressure's in here and it's drawing up ahead of it those southerly winds, which is bringing the dust, those strong winds, because it's quite an intense area of low pressure, could draw up quite a bit of dust. So it might make sunsets a little hazier, a little bit more spectacular towards the end of the week. So that's something to keep an eye on. This is for Friday, don't forget. Excellent. Well, plenty going on then in this week's deep dive. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do keep those comments coming. Let us know which bit you like, which bit you don't like, any other suggestions for any other content that you'd like us to contemplate. As I mentioned, Aidan's deep dive, Aidan's 10-day trend tomorrow. This was the deep dive. Aidan's 10-day trend tomorrow should be a good one. Don't forget to tune in to the Weather Studio Live this Friday. It's Aidan and me doing it this week. So yeah, be a good quiz on that. That's at Friday at 12:15. Don't forget the sunscreen if you're sensitive. UV levels at the moment are about 3 or 4, and I made a video about UV and we posted that at the weekend, so we'll put that in the chat as well, so you can check out that and find out a little bit more about UV, because it's as strong now, the sun, as it is towards the end of September. So yeah, something to be aware of, even though it is nice and sunny. Something else to be aware of is the equinox on Thursday at 9:01. So after that, however you measure it, spring has started. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching this week's deep dive. I'll see you again soon.